All right, it's time for week 6 predictions. I'm going to go through the schedule of games and give you not a pick on every game played, obviously, but some of the more interesting games. Now, I've already done prediction videos on a handful of games, so if you're curious about those, you can click back and check them out. I did Alabama, Vandy, Louisville, Virginia, Texas, and Florida. That was all in one video. And then I did a Miami, Florida State prediction video. So if you want those games, you can click back. You can click back and look at those. We're going to do some of the other games now. There are games, some games on tonight, Friday. Charlotte and South Florida, Western Kentucky and Delaware, New Mexico and San Jose State. The only interesting game, West Virginia travels to BYU. That game doesn't even come on until 10:30. I've been streaming on Fridays. I don't know if I'm going to make it up to stream that game. We'll see. But West Virginia travels to BYU to take on the Cougs. BYU, of course, undefeated at 4-0. West Virginia not off to a good start under Rich Rod, his first year back after being there 20 years ago or whatever it was. West Virginia's 2-3. BYU is favored by 20 in this game. And I actually like BYU to cover. I think BYU will win big. West Virginia has that one good win earlier this season against Pitt. That's a rivalry game, and it was a home game for West Virginia. Outside of that, not a lot of bright spots early on for Rich Rod at West Virginia. BYU, on the other hand, undefeated, so starting the season very similar to the way they did last year. Of course, they got to like 7-0 or 8-0, something like that last year, ranked up in the top 10, and then they lost a couple of games in the last month of the season and sort of played their way out of the Big 12 championship. So BYU is going to look to keep it going tonight at home. I like BYU to win big. Let's move on to some of the Saturday games now. Georgia plays at noon this week, looking to rebound after that close loss at home last week to Alabama, a 3-point loss, 24-21. Georgia fell to 3-1 on the season. Kentucky 2-2. And they might be the worst team in the SEC. I mean, Florida is pretty bad, but I don't know if Kentucky could score on them. Florida's got a decent defense. I would probably take Auburn to beat Kentucky. Feels like Jackson Arnold could probably do enough running around to beat them. I don't know who else Arkansas. I think Arkansas could definitely outscore Kentucky. So I don't know, whoever you think the worst 2 or 3 teams are in the SEC. I don't know if Kentucky could beat any of them. It's going to be a really rough year for Kentucky, I think. Georgia 3-1, Kentucky 2-2. Georgia back at home again this week. It's going to be a noon kickoff, and Georgia, for whatever reason, it seems has been starting games slow for really a couple of years now. A lot of cases they wait until the second half. Some cases halfway through the second quarter before they decide to actually start playing. It's been like a 2-year trend. That combined with the fact that this is a noon game. And you see a lot of slow starts in noon games, has me a little leery on Georgia. They're a 20-point favorite in this one. However, I do think Georgia's going to blow Kentucky out. I tell you what I like to do in these spots here as far as the betting angle goes is a little bit weird here. I would take Kentucky plus the points in the first half. Kentucky is getting about 10 or 11 points in the first half. Georgia traditionally starts slow. And this is a noon game, so a couple of things working against the dogs there for the first half. You might want to consider taking Kentucky plus the points for the first half, but for the full game, I like Georgia to cover the 20 and win by 3 touchdowns or more. Give me the dogs to cover. Michigan, almost said Michigan. Michigan wish they had some receivers, don't they? Yeah, they do. Wisconsin on the road at Michigan is what I meant to say. Michigan 3-1, Wisconsin unranked at 2-2. Luke Fickell, boy, he has had a rough go of it as head coach up there in Madison. It just hasn't worked. I liked him at Cincinnati. I thought he was going to be a successful head coach. He felt like a Big Ten guy to me, even when he was at Cincinnati. He gets an opportunity there in the Big Ten at Wisconsin, and all he's done is take them from a 9-10 win in their sleep type of team to struggling to win 6 and 7 games a year there. It just has not worked for him there. He could be running out of time. They got to travel to Ann Arbor to take on Bryce Underwood and the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan's a 17-point favorite. I think Justice Haynes is going to go absolutely nuts in this game. This is a lot of points, though, for a Michigan offense that doesn't tend to score a lot of points. I would probably stay away from this one. I don't know if I can lay 17 with Michigan. I don't know that I trust Wisconsin enough, though, to only take the 17, but I do think Michigan wins the game easily. Here's an interesting one. This one's also at noon. Clemson on the road at North Carolina. And North Carolina has the better record. As bad as North Carolina has been under Bill Belichick to start the season, and they've been bad, they're 2-2. Clemson, of course, just 1-3. It's just a disastrous start to the season for the Taters. Dabo having to answer a lot of uncomfortable questions. Cade Klubnik has regressed to the point where he's unrecognizable. They have no run game at all outside of a converted wide receiver that they're forcing to play running back, Adam Randall. The defense has been underwhelming to me. It hasn't been bad. I wouldn't describe the Clemson defense as bad, but it hasn't been anywhere near what we're sort of accustomed to seeing or what we thought it might be this year. The front seven is loaded with NFL talent, but it's not playing like it, at least not often enough. Clemson 1-3, North Carolina 2-2. I ain't Clemson wins here. This is going to be my last sort of hoorah for Clemson, though. I picked them to beat LSU in week 1. They lost the game. I picked them to cover and beat Syracuse. They lost. And then I said, well, okay, I'll take them against Georgia Tech to at least win the game. I took Georgia Tech into points, but I think, Clemson will win a close one. They lost. This is my last go-round here with Clemson. If Clemson can't go on the road and blow out a terrible North Carolina team, I'm done with Clemson for the rest of the year. It might actually do Clemson some good to get out of town. The heat has been turned up there after that home loss to Syracuse. They were off last week. Sometimes when things aren't going well, it's actually a positive to go on the road and play something out of town here. So it's a short trip up the road, but Clemson at North Carolina. Clemson's a 14-point favorite. I like Clemson to win, and I like Clemson to cover. Illinois at Purdue, also a noon game. Illinois 4-1. Nice rebound for Illinois last week. Got absolutely demolished by Indiana a couple of weeks ago. Turned around and beat Southern Cal in a last-second field goal last week to improve to 4-1. Purdue 2-2. I don't think Purdue's quite as bad as they have been over the last couple of years, but they're still pretty bad. They're still pretty bad. Purdue is getting 9 points. I like Purdue plus the 9. I do think Illinois will win the game by a touchdown, but I think 9 points is too many. Give me Purdue at home plus 9. Kansas State at Baylor. I'm off the Kansas State train, as previously mentioned. They're a 5.5-point underdog on the road at Baylor. Both teams are, Baylor's 3-2, Kansas State's 2-3. I like Baylor here to cover the 5.5. Sawyer Robertson's one of the best quarterbacks in football. Their offense moves up and down the field. Now, they've got defensive issues, but I don't know that Kansas State and quarterback Avery Johnson are going to be able to take advantage of that. I like Baylor at home minus 5.5. All right, moving right along. Virginia and Louisville. Interesting game here, given what happened last week in the Virginia-Florida State game. But this one comes on at 3:30. Virginia got to go on the road this week to an undefeated Louisville team. Louisville 4-1. Louisville 4-0. Virginia 4-1. And Louisville's a 7-point home favorite. I've not been impressed with Louisville this year. I was pretty high on them in the preseason, had them ranked around 15. They're undefeated, but they just haven't looked as good as I thought they would look in the couple of games that I've watched them play, particularly the James Madison game. They get a chance to prove it again this week at home against Virginia. Louisville's favored by 7. I'm going to take Virginia plus the 7 points. This is a dangerous play here because that was a huge win for Virginia. They stormed the field, massive win, celebration, all that kind of stuff. It can be difficult to then turn around and go on the road and stay focused. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. I'm going to take Virginia plus 7 to keep it close on the road at Louisville. Washington, after taking their first loss last weekend at home to Ohio State, has to travel all the way across the country to take on an undefeated Maryland team. Maryland's 4-0. I think Washington's a better team than Maryland, but this is a tough spot here for Washington. They got beat up physically last week against maybe the best team in the country, Ohio State, struggled to score. And now they got to fly all the way across the country to take on an undefeated Maryland team. Maryland's getting 6 points. I like Maryland plus 6, and I think Maryland could win this game outright. This is one of those weird things where, if these two teams played 10 times, I do think Washington probably wins more than they loses. But because of the spot and the situation that this game is occurring in the week after the Ohio State game and the travel involved across the country to play at Maryland, I'm going to take the Terps here plus the 6, and I think they probably win the game outright. All right, moving right along. Still at 3:30. Penn State travels all the way across the country the other direction to play winless UCLA. And Nico, I'm about to leave you. Penn State, of course, 3-1 after dropping a heartbreaking loss last week at home at night in a whiteout to Oregon. So it's the same familiar sort of theme and storyline for James Franklin and Penn State. Yeah, they're a good team. They beat all the bad teams, but they can't beat anybody with equal talent. They lose to every top 5 or top 10 team they play. They're overrated. They're overhyped. James Franklin doesn't know what he's doing. The whole deal. This is a tough trip to make, Penn State to UCLA, but I don't know that there's an easier team you could play when you get there than UCLA. They are really, really bad. Penn State is a 24.5-point favorite on the road at UCLA. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know how UCLA is going to score here on this Penn State defense. We can talk all the trash we want about Penn State and James Franklin and Drew Aller and their inability to score in big games and all that, but I do believe in their defense. I think they did a pretty good job against what I think is a really good Oregon offense last week. I think they can run it up on UCLA if that's what they choose to do. So for that reason, this is a huge number. I don't like the latest kind of number here in a conference game, especially on a road team with this type of travel. But that's how bad UCLA is. I'm going to take Penn State minus 24.5. Texas at Florida. Already talked about that game earlier in the week. You can click back and check it out. Same thing with Vandy and Alabama. Let's see. Michigan State at Nebraska. Now, this could be a good game here. Nebraska's at home. They're 3-1. Michigan State, you might not know, is also 3-1. Their only loss was on the road at Southern Cal. And they didn't necessarily get blown out. They lost, I believe it was 45-31, something like that. Now everybody scores on Southern Cal, but I like Jonathan Smith. I liked the hire when they made it. He was really good at Oregon State, had them headed in a good direction there, and then the Pac-12 sort of imploded around him, and he jumped ship and headed to Michigan State when they fired their coach. Walked into a bad situation last year, Jonathan Smith did at Michigan State, so didn't have a great year. But I do like the hire, and it's pretty evident that he's starting to turn things around there. Nebraska's a 12.5-point home favorite. Their only loss coming at home to Michigan earlier in the year. I think Michigan State could potentially win this game. I'm not going to bet them to win, but I'm going to take Michigan State plus 12.5. I like what I've seen from Michigan State, and Nebraska is good. They're not great. Now, Nebraska does have a chance to win this game since Michigan State's not ranked. So that's worth pointing out. Nebraska, of course, has lost 28 or 29 games in a row now to ranked teams. But Michigan State, not ranked. So Nebraska does have a chance and could win this game. It's at home. But I'm going to take Michigan State plus 12.5. I think they can keep it close. All right, let's keep going here. We're into the primetime games. Texas Tech at Houston. This is one of my favorite picks of the week here. Houston's undefeated at 4-0, and you can't name a single player on their team. Texas Tech is undefeated, same record, 4-0, and they're ranked 11th. They have a big road win against Utah a couple of weeks ago, so they've been on the road and proved they can play at a high level away from home. This is a short trip here for them to make Texas Tech to Houston. But still, it's a road environment in an opposing team's stadium with a hostile crowd. I don't think it's going to matter. I was withholding judgment on Texas Tech until I saw them play Utah. I saw them play Utah, and I saw them not only win that game, but beat Utah at their own game. They whipped Utah along the lines of scrimmage. It wasn't a thing where they just spread Utah out and use skill position players and speed to beat them. They beat them at the point of attack and the line of scrimmage, too. They are a complete team. Texas Tech might be the cream of the crop in the Big 12. They're a 12-point favorite on the road at Houston. I think Houston takes their first loss. I like Texas Tech to win the game, and I think they cover to 12. Give me Texas Tech late at 12. UNLV on the road at Wyoming. What's going on here? UNLV 4-0, Wyoming 2-2, and UNLV only favored by 3.5. The last time UNLV traveled, they had a hard time at Miami of Ohio. They had to come back in the second half to win that game. 3.5 points is a tricky number. I'd rather have it at 3. I'm not going to bet that game, but since I'm the internet's only UNLV fan, I'm going to go out on a limb and say UNLV does find a way to win the game on the road at Wyoming. Minnesota at Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to roll here. Minnesota's 3-1. They're not very good. Sorry, they're not. I think Ohio State's going to destroy them. They're favored by 23.5. They're coming off of a big road win last week at Washington, where they absolutely shut down what had been one of the most exciting offenses in the country up to that point, that Washington offense. They couldn't do anything against Ohio State's defense. Ohio State had the best defense in the country last year. They might have a better defense this year, which is crazy when you think about what they lost. And then they lost Jim Knowles, their defensive coordinator, but Matt Patricia's come in from the NFL, and they haven't missed a beat. That defense is the real deal for Ohio State. I think Minnesota's going to struggle to score just like Washington did. And I do think Ohio State can get into the 30s. So I'm going to take Ohio State minus 23.5. I think they blow out PJ Fleck in the road of boaters. Miami and Florida State already did a video on that game. You can click back and check it out. Colorado on the road at TCU. Boy, this is a bad spot for Colorado here. 2-3, not any good on the road against TCU, who blew a 17-point lead last week on the road at Arizona State. That's their only loss of the year. They were up 17-0 Friday night, last Friday, same night that Florida State lost to Virginia. They go on the road to Arizona State. They get up 17-0. They let Arizona State come all the way back and win that thing on a game-winning field goal. So they're 3-1, but they're back at home this week, and Colorado just can't get right. Changing quarterbacks every other game. They're back to Caden Salter now. I just don't think it's going to matter. Deion's in over his head, has absolutely no clue what he's doing. TCU's a 13.5-point favorite. They might win this game by 5 touchdowns, and I'm not joking. I think this is going to be a blowout here. Give me TCU big. Mississippi State on the road at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is favored by 15.5. Why? I don't know. The over-under is 57. Now, my favorite pick in this game is over 57. I think both of these teams are going to score. You remember the Texas A&M Notre Dame game? What was the score of that thing? 42-40, whatever. We could be headed for another situation like that here. Mississippi State damn near beat Tennessee last week at home. It went to overtime. I really like Blake Shapen. I like the offense at Mississippi State. And Texas A&M is good too. They beat Auburn last week. They've already beat Notre Dame. Like I mentioned, they're 4-0. Mississippi State's 4-1. Mississippi State's favored, or Texas A&M is favored by 15.5. That seems like too many points to me. Mississippi State is a much better team than they were last year. They were like a 2-win team. They were horrible last year. They're obviously much better. I think Texas A&M wins the game at home. That's a tough place to play. I don't know if I would lay the 15.5 points with Texas A&M, though, but my favorite bet here is over 57 points scored in that game, and I do think Texas A&M will win. The last one up here for today is going to be Duke on the road at Cal. Cal, surprisingly, 4-1. Duke sits at 3-2, and Duke's a 2.5-point road favorite. This is another travel game where Duke's flying from the East Coast to the West Coast to take on Cal, and this game's at 10:30 at night West Coast time, so a late game. I think Cal wins the game. They're an underdog. They're a 2.5-point underdog. So, take the 2.5 points if it makes you feel better as far as your betting goes. But I think Cal's going to win this game at home. I haven't been impressed with what I've seen from Duke this year. They're too up and down. Now, Cal, I don't think is great either, but the travel and them being at home, late game, I think that's enough for me. I think Cal gets the win over Duke. All right, there you go. That's my thoughts and predictions for some of these games coming up here in week 6. Let me know down below what you think about these games. I appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.